Raiders have been the most surprising team in the NFL. They have beaten playoff teams in back-to-back weeks to start the season. First the Ravens, then the Steelers. Going into this season, Sportsline gave them just a 13% chance to make the playoffs. Now, close to 50-50. And for the first time in 5 years, the Chiefs are not in first place in the AFC West. They're behind both the Raiders and the Broncos, who are the only two unbeaten teams in the AFC. The odds are still long for those teams to win the division. We're just 2 weeks in, it's early, but the early returns great so far for both the Raiders and the Broncos, who are going to threaten to make the postseason. Let's bring in Charles Davis here to give us the good, the bad, and the ugly from week 2 in the NFL and kind of judge things through the first, 10% of the season or so. Charles was on the call for Vegas's win in Pittsburgh. How about the fact, Charles, that the Raiders and the Broncos are the only two unbeatens in the AFC already?
Well, I love how you started this segment with the good, the bad, and the ugly. I figure you're the good, I'm the bad, and the ugly, and we'll just put it all together here. But you're exactly right. When you look at those standings, and yes, I love how you said it, it's only 2 games in, correct? But when the season began, we expected Kansas City 1, Los Angeles Chargers 2, Denver 3, Las Vegas Raiders 4. I think that was how it was on most accounts. Now we have it flipped in the early going. And a real case could be made that the Las Vegas Raiders are playing the best football of anyone in the National Football League so far, beating 2 playoff teams from last year, the Ravens, and then going on the road and beating Pittsburgh. That's big time. Playing the AFC North, beating them at Rock'em Sock'em football 2 weeks in a row with a somewhat depleted roster, and Derek Carr playing at an MVP level. Flip it over to Denver. Teddy Bridgewater wins the job coming out of preseason over Drew Lock. He's been spectacular the first couple of games. Cortland Sutton is back after the knee injury last year. Well over 150 yards last week, 9 catches. He's back in a big way. Noah Fant continuing to develop at tight end. Melvin Gordon running the football. And you knew they had a good defense already with Vic Fangio and crew. Like what we're seeing out of Denver, their wins are big because they needed them for confidence, even though they weren't against teams that we would consider terrific so far.
Yeah, the Broncos winning both those games on the road. We also saw the 49ers do that in the NFC West, and that's where we go for our good in the NFC. We got 2 unbeatens in the AFC West, 3 unbeatens in the NFC West. The 49ers, as I mentioned, won both on the road, but how about the fun offenses we're seeing from the Rams and Kyler Murray and the Cardinals? Have been so fun to watch.
They've been an absolute blast. And the Rams we expected because we were so eager to see Matthew Stafford now with that great receiving core, the Robert Woodses, and of course Cooper Kupp, who's been spectacular. I will tell you this as a quick aside. I saw Cooper Kupp as a college freshman at a camp running routes, and I've been a fan ever since, and he's far exceeded what many people thought. I always thought he'd be terrific. He's even exceeded what I thought because he really can be a wide receiver 1, the way he runs routes, catches the football, etc. But Tyler Higbee at tight end, this Rams offense we figured would be pretty darn good. And Arizona, we just wanted to continue to see Kyler Murray blossom, and he's done that in a huge way. Now throw in the rookie out of Purdue, Rondale Moore, who as a freshman in college burst onto the scene and wrecked Ohio State in a big upset. Had some injury troubles after that, wasn't quite the same guy. This is the Rondale Moore we saw as a freshman at Purdue, now continuing to grow. And boy, are the Arizona Cardinals benefiting from that. You're exactly right about the offenses. They're fun. They're video game offenses, and they're a blast to watch.
And can't wait to see the matchup between the Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday afternoon. That's the good. Now we go to the bad, and it didn't get much worse than Zach Wilson, the rookie quarterback, throwing 4 picks for the Jets. But the thing is, Charles, it does get worse for the Jets because they know that Sam Darnold, who was traded away, is over there in Carolina, and he's got them off to a 2-0 start.
Yeah, it always happens that way, doesn't it? And Sam Darnold's so thankful to get a second shot, but he got a second shot with a team that had some weapons in place. Talk about DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, who he knew in New York already. They drafted Terrace Marshall out of LSU. You bring back Christian McCaffrey off of injury, who does it all out of the backfield. And now you're starting to put it together. Sam Darnold taking advantage of all of those guys, has them off to a 2-0 start, and likely, I'm not saying they will because Houston is a tougher route than people thought, but likely to get to 3-0 on Thursday night. What a great beginning for them. For the Jets, with Zach Wilson, you know they're going to be rookie growing pains for a quarterback. But here's the thing, and I've written it down and I put it in ink now. Evaluating these quarterbacks off of their pro days, where we get so excited, not just pro days, but when we see them in games where they're making those off-platform throws and those spectacular plays that aren't scripted. Well, we see a lot more of that on pro days as well, and we really get wowed by it. The guys that win in the NFL still go back 3, 5, 7 steps in the pocket, hit the back foot, hit the throws on time. Zach Wilson's just got to learn to be a little more boring. Take some of those completions. Everything doesn't have to be spectacular. That'll prevent some of these interceptions happening going forward. He's feeling a little bit of pressure to live up to being the number 2 pick. They've just got to rein him in a little bit, and he has to go ahead and get a little control that way, and I believe he will. I think he's going to be terrific down the road.
Jets are the biggest underdog of Week 3 at the Broncos. Charles, another reason not to overreact to Week 1. The Saints come crashing down. I know it's probably somewhere in the middle here, but which performance do you think is closer to what we're going to see the rest of the way? What we saw in Week 1 from the Saints or what we saw in Week 2?
I think more in Week 1 because this is a very good roster overall, Chris, and they have been for a long time now. They have an excellent defense. The offense is still trying to find its way a little bit with a new quarterback because Drew Brees has been there since, you and I were probably born. So when you look at it that way, give them a little bit of time. But here's the thing that I don't know that all of us are taking into account. When everything happened with all the issues back in New Orleans and they had to move and find a place to practice, find a place to train, find a place to play, it's literally been on the road since then. They're all together, and sometimes that's good for bonding, but these are grown men who are missing their families, missing the kids doing things, missing a routine at home, worried about what's happening back at home while they're trying to play football. We probably shouldn't be surprised that they hit a real bump in Week 2. They've been on the road a long time in a number of different locations. Even their home game was away from where they've been training, which was the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Their home game was in Jacksonville. So let's face it, this is a team that needs to get to New Orleans, and once they do and get solid again, I think much more of Week 1 than what we saw in Week 2. Shouldn't have been a major surprise. I think we all didn't give it enough credence.
One more week on the road. They are in New England, and then they get to return home in Week 4. So that's the good and the bad. Now to the ugly, Charles. A week defined by injuries. You saw the Steelers, T.J. Watt, Deontay Johnson, Big Ben got hurt. Quarterbacks, though, hit especially hard with the injury bug. Which quarterback injury concerns you the most going forward?
Well, I think it has to be Carson Wentz in Indianapolis because the 2 ankles, they were hitting the reset button with a team that went to the playoffs last year, knew they had a rough start to their schedule in terms of who they were playing, and now they get their quarterback hurt as they try and integrate him into what they did last year, taking over for Phillip Rivers. Now you end up going with Jacob Eason if Carson Wentz is out for any appreciable amount of time. Youngster at the University of Washington who has potential but hasn't really done it, and you're already 0-2. All right, a tough division for them because Tennessee found a way to get right last week and a big come-from-behind win at Seattle. That was one where everyone thought they were going to drop one as well. Indianapolis goes to Tennessee this week. That's a huge ball game for them. I'm not holding out much hope that Carson Wentz is going to be able to play, so it's Jacob Eason's ball. How many times will Jonathan Taylor carry it against a defense of Tennessee that knows he is coming? So I think that's the biggest one. We're going to see, my crew's going to see Miami. We'll have to see if Tua Tagovailoa makes it back. But they have Jacoby Brissett, who has started plenty of games in this league, who may take the ball instead as well.
Miami at Vegas is the game that Charles Davis is going to be calling this week, a 4 Eastern time game on CBS. The social media talker of the week, Charles, was all those taunting penalties. The officials just following the rules laid out by the NFL. My question is, why did the NFL think this was a big enough problem that it just needs to be eliminated like this?
I think it's twofold. Number one, when you have taunting penalties, there's always going to be payback. Okay, I'm going to give you a hockey analogy. When Gordie Howe was ruling the ice back in the good old days when there was a 6-team league, he always used to say, hey, if you want to do something, you're not going to be able to hide because we play like 18 times a year. We're going to find you. Well, the same mentality holds true. If someone taunts someone does something a little bit on the shady side, guys are going to look to even the score at some point, and things can get out of control, and the officials don't want that to happen. The league doesn't want that to happen. The second thing is, let's face it, the NFL does have an image. They want to make sure that they're showing the right way to play ball for everyone who's watching, and it filters down. Kids watch and see. One thing I see a lot right now, Chris, is the mouthpiece is dangling. You see that from a lot of guys in the NFL? Mm-hmm. Turn on your average college game now and see how many times you see mouthpieces dangling. The mouthpieces are there for protection from concussions. That's got something that needs to be taken into account. I hope the league takes a good hard look at that because we're watching a lot of youngsters now wanting to play without mouthpieces. I don't think that's cool. But back to the taunting, that's what I think the crackdown is, and that's why they want to get it right. But let's face it, Pete Carroll's right. Sometimes those taunting penalties, in the normal course of the game, they can really swing it one way or the other against a team, so all the teams have to be wary.
We'll see if it changes things moving forward and if officials continue to call that at this alarming clip so far. Charles, we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us here on HQ. Again, he's going to be in Vegas for the first time calling an NFL game. Dolphins at Raiders as Vegas tries to stay perfect and get to 3-0. That's Sunday at 4:05 Eastern Time. Early window looking like this. Headlined by the Chiefs hosting the Chargers. Justin Herbert against Patrick Mahomes. Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.